Castro back for chapter 11 of my book, Flowerantha. I have no special guest today, so we'll get started right away. We need a plan, said Mash, and we can't look too suspicious. If any guards spot us, we might have to get punishment like Lonnie had. Is that what happened to Lonnie? Asked Malin. I thought something looked a little strange, but I didn't want to say anything. Yeah, their lips were stretched for talking back. Malin shivered. So what's the plan? Asked Beverly. Which fountain do you think is the right one? Mash scratched his head. We'll have to dig them out and try them all, I guess. Malin stared at the floor. I can't go without saying goodbye to Bushroll. Beverly sighed. I don't want to either. Let's just figure out what fountain it is and then try to find Bushroll. Deal? Malin still didn't raise her eyes. Sure. Let's start with one inside the castle that I didn't fill, said Mash. I saw one of them when I was walking around the castle before, said Beverly. Hopefully I can find it again. The three jogged down one of the long hallways. Mash halted and put both his arms out to stop them. Malin froze just short of his arm, but Beverly wasn't paying attention and plowed into him. He grabbed her and put his hand up to his lips. I hear something. He swung his head around in search of an escape route. Letting go of Beverly, he grabbed the iron handle of the nearest wooden door and flung it open. He held the door and motioned for the girls to go in. The crack beneath the door provided a sliver of light. Otherwise, the room was cloaked in darkness. Mash closed the door behind them, just as a sound like thunder passed the door. The three of them huddled near the door, and as the sound got quieter, Mash reached his hand out to the door handle. The thundering sound returned, even louder than before. The floor beneath them trembled. Is this an earthquake? Whispered Beverly. Mash put his finger up to his mouth again, while Malin made a frantic cutting motion across her throat. The three of them were thrown back when the door burst open from some outside force. Despite how large the doorway was, it was still too small for the enormous monster knight to fit through. The beast stuck its head in first and roared as Mash and the girls crab-walked as fast as they could to the back wall. The extra light illuminated the rest of the room. On the left side was a table with straps on it. Tools that appeared to be doctor's instruments lined shelves on the wall above the table. A metal bookshelf stood against the wall by the door. It held different-sized metal balls on each of the shelves. The beast swung its great head, slamming it into the shelves. The sides of the structure bent upon impact, but it did not tip over. The back of it was secured to the wall. While the beast slammed its snout repeatedly, bending the metal more and more, Mash scanned the room. On the right wall was a pile of the same poles that made up the shelf that the metal balls were resting on. Mash snatched one of the poles and tossed one to Beverly. She reacted and caught it in midair. Nice catch, said Mash. Remember our weapons lesson? Beverly nodded. Time to put it into practice. Mash ran at the monster knight and drove the pole into the gums of his bared teeth. The monster knight swung his head, but Mash dodged it, and the beast knocked its skull into the shelf again. The metal scaffolding groaned and collapsed into itself, and the solid balls crashed to the floor, one by one, and rolled right in Beverly and Malin's direction. Malin shielded herself, but Beverly faced the rolling balls head on. Beverly's foot intercepted one that was coming right at Malin's ankle, and she yelped. Malin cracked an eye open and dodged the next ball that came her way. Learning from her mistake, Beverly used the pole to block the balls coming toward her. Mash tried to back up to the girls, but one ball clipped his heel, and he fell to the ground. Beverly shuffled over to him and dropped her knees to the ground with her legs pointed outward to deflect the last ball that was headed right for Mash. Where'd you learn to do that? He asked. Soccer practice. Dodgeball in gym class is really paying off too, Malin said as she jumped out of the way. Yeah, dodgeball was a lot smarter idea. Beverly massaged her shins. Mash heaved the pole again and swatted the monster knight on the nose. The beast roared and backed out of the room. Mash stuck his head out. He's still out there. How are we going to get out? Asked Malin. Yeah, what if he never leaves? What if we starve here? That's not likely, but just in case, we'll have to think of a reason for him to leave, said Mash. Beverly, do you still have the knife I gave you? Beverly's hand went to the spot on her dress where the knife was tied. Yes, it's still there. She worked to untie the leather knot at her side and held the knife out to Mash. He shook his head. You can do it. Remember what we practiced? Well, yeah, but just try. She stood in the doorway and squared herself off to the monster knight. Hesitating, she looked at Mash for some reassurance. He nodded and motioned for her to go on. Taking a deep breath, she whipped the knife out the door, and the monster knight bellowed as it nicked his neck. I did it! She flung her arm around Mash's shoulder, and he squeezed her back. Great job, but I think we need to aim for something more sensitive, like its eyes, said Mash. Its skin is too tough. Do we have anything else to throw? Beverly left her position and hurried to the wall with all the medical tools on it. Maylin, come here and help me carry this stuff. Maylin helped Beverly collect the instruments. They carried hammers and wrenches, a saw, some knives, and crude-looking screwdriver, and anything that would fit in their arms. Mash picked up a knife in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. He closed one eye to aim and let the knife fly first. It missed its target and zipped by the monster knight's massive head. He readjusted his stance and pointed the screwdriver at the moving target. The screwdriver seemed to glide in slow motion when he released it. It plunged right under the beast's eyelid and into the yellow pupil. The monster knight tossed its head and howled like an injured dog. Beverly hid her face behind her hands. Gross, I almost feel sorry for him. The monster knight bucked its head, but did not cease its pacing in front of the doorway. Maybe we can try to trip him somehow, said Mash. Beverly eyed the scattered metal balls. Bowling, anyone? That might work, said Maylin. What's bowling? Oh, you'd love it. You just roll a ball and a bunch of pins and try to knock them all down. I'm not great at it, but it's pretty fun. Maylin's better than I am. Beverly picked up one of the balls. Normally there are holes you put your fingers in, but we can just palm it. That's what my older brothers do. Sure, whatever you say, said Mash. Maylin, show him how it's done. Beverly handed her the ball. Maylin rolled her eyes. Leaning her top half out the door, she swung her arm back like a pendulum and released the ball. It careened down the hall to where the monster knight had just come back around to pace the other way, and the ball hit its tail. Direct hit, Beverly shouted, holding up her hand for a high five. Maylin returned the high five without much vigor. Yeah, but it didn't do anything. I don't think this bowling thing was such a good idea. It's just the first one. I'm hoping he'll either get really annoyed or trip on one of them, said Beverly. Mash, you want to go next? Why don't you go, so that I know more of what I'm supposed to be doing? Chuck the ball at the monster knight, Mash. There's really nothing to know, said Beverly with a playful jab of her elbow. Yes, but if we're making sport of it, I want to be sure I know the rules, he said. Okay, fine. I'll go next. Beverly picked up another one of the balls and balanced it on her right hand in front of her face. It teetered, but she recovered and steadied it with her left hand. Beverly steadied herself, took 3 steps, and released the ball. It veered to the right, bounced off a wall, and managed to come to rest beside the monster knight's left foot. That was a warm-up. She lifted another ball into position. Before Mash or Maylin could object, she took her approach again and released. The ball went straighter this time, but as a result, it rolled right through the monster knight's legs. Goal, deadpanned Maylin. All right, let me try this. Mash picked up a ball, bounced in his hands, and practiced his approach without letting go. He did this several times until he found a ball he liked. If you ever make it to our home, or the Amaranth, be sure to join a bowling team, said Beverly. You look like a pro already, and you haven't even thrown yet. Mash stood near the door, took 1 step, and launched the ball into the air, more like a softball throw than bowling. The ball smacked into the monster knight's shin, and they got a reaction. The monster knight let out a short, bark-like roar of annoyance. He flashed his teeth through the door again, and then went back to pacing. It's not working, said Maylin in despair. One by one, the 3 of them picked up a ball and launched it into the hallway. As each ball made contact, the monster knight grunted and jerked its body away from the impact. Its great nostrils flared, and the gray feathers along its shoulders and back stood up on end like an angry cat's fur. The edge of the beast's foot made contact with one of the bigger balls, and it stumbled, its shoulder crashing against the wall opposite them. I like this bowling thing as a game, but it seems pretty ineffective. Mash searched for something else to use against the monster knight. I have another plan. He grabbed a rolled-up lasso of rope that was over the table with straps on it. If he stumbles again, I'm going to tie his feet together. He has wings too, Mash, said Malin. I'll get those too. How is that a good idea? Asked Beverly. He has teeth too. Mash ignored her last comment. While I'm tying him up, you run. Find another room, or if you can make it to the fountain, do it. Beverly tried to grab his arm to stop him. Mash, no! Beverly. He faced her, stood right in front of her, and placed his hands on her shoulders, like he had when they first arrived at the castle. The only way out is through those fountains. And the only way to those fountains is through that monster night. Please, let me do this for you and Malin. I will be fine. Beverly's mouth was pinched in an expression of concern, but she managed a half smile. This is a terrible idea, but if you think it'll work. He squeezed her shoulders. At least it's not bowling. Beverly laughed and pushed his chest away. Malin, you ready? As ready as I'm going to be, she said. The girls positioned themselves at the door, right behind Mash, who was armed with the looped rope. They waited for the monster night to trip. It had to happen eventually. There were so many tools and metal balls scattered across the floor that there was no way the monster knight could avoid stepping on them forever. And he didn't. Whenever he hit one and swayed to the side, Mash flinched and stepped into the hallway, and the girls crouched into a racing position. But the monster knight recovered, and the three returned to their vigilant positions. If this hurts as much as stepping on a Lego, this is going to take him right to his scaly knees, said Beverly. I have no idea what that means, but I'd like to see that happen. Mash tightened the rope between his hands. The monster knight planted his massive foot on one of the tools and let out a pitiful, roaring yelp. It stumbled a little, but once again was back on 2 solid feet. Mash pumped his fist. Come on, come on. The monster knight paced again, this time with its back to the door. It tread on a tool with a spiked ball on the end and howled. Off balance, it stepped on a second instrument and lunged forward without any leverage to catch himself. Its face hit the ground, and Mash didn't waste another second. He sprinted toward the beast and yelled to the girls to go. Beverly darted out first, calling to Malin to follow. Beverly sat on the edge of the leathery leg and swung her legs over. Malin followed and crawled over the ankle, leaning in the opposite direction to avoid the sharp, yellowed claws on the foot that was almost as big as her. Once they had cleared the monster knight, they sped toward the end of the hall. The fountain was in sight. Beverly grabbed the side and used it to swing herself around to the back, and she and Malin crouched behind the stone fountain. If this doesn't work, we're trapped again. Beverly peeked over the edge of the fountain. I thought of that, said Malin. They waited for a few minutes, but there was only a loud, moaning noise and then silence. Then there was a loud roar. Beverly flinched. Do you think we should go back for him? No. Malin pulled her back down. Okay, fine. They waited another minute before the sound of pounding footsteps met their ears. It's definitely not a monster knight, said Beverly, but she remained in her crouched position. Mash came into view, ran right into the fountain, and used it to stop his momentum. Beverly leapt up and was at his side. Is it safe now? Yes, we should be all right. I didn't realize how long that rope actually was. He'll probably break through it eventually, but he's tied up right now. The only thing I left were his teeny tiny useless hands. Great job! Beverly held up her hand for a high five. Mash stared at it and grabbed it. You're supposed to slap it. She held her hand up again, and this time he slapped it. Very good. Mash dug his hand into the overflowing well of sand. This is not going to be easy. I don't have any wishes left. He stuck his other hand in and then threw the handful of sand to the floor. Malin cupped a handful of sand, but dropped it back into the well and wiped her hands off on her leafy skirt. Is it just me, or is the sand moving? Beverly shrieked. The sand was indeed moving. A dozen creatures that were a combination of rats and insects, with rats' heads, scaly backs, insect feet, and long, rat-like tails skittered from the depths of the sand. Mopey! Beverly backed up against the wall. I'm not going anywhere near that. The rat insect creatures scurried over the edge of the fountain, onto the floor, and down the hallway. Where the heck are they going? Malin stood on her tiptoes and pressed her back into the wall next to Beverly. I have no idea. Mash continued to dig, pushing the rat insects out of the way. Are you girls going to help? Malin shook her head, while Beverly stood against the wall, refusing to move. This is going to take forever if I have to do it myself. When those things leave, then maybe, said Beverly. One of the critters reached the edge of the fountain and climbed over the stone lip headed in Beverly's direction. She yelped and danced on her tiptoes out of the way behind Maylin. Mash dug a few more handfuls of rat insect-filled sand out of the fountain before he stopped, brushing his hands off on his shorts. This is hopeless. We have to figure out a different way. Guys, said Maylin, did you hear that? The three froze. Something rumbled down the hall. Is that a monster night? Asked Beverly. They couldn't move. Even if they could, there was nowhere to go. They were trapped at a dead end with no escape. The rumbling sound grew closer, as if a violent thunderstorm was driving right toward them. A sudden crash of the thunder caused them all to jump. The sound stopped, and they exchanged nervous glances. After a second, running footsteps that sounded like leather, slapping against the stone floor, replaced the thundering. A mop of wavy dark blonde hair came into view. Maylin grinned, and even Mash sighed in relief. Was that you finishing off the monster night? Asked Mash. Panting, Bushrell said, I thought you might need some help. That was the end of chapter 11. Hope you join me next time.